So I'm here today with Romeo, who's a pseudonym for someone who's not using her real name for reasons that will become apparent as we get into this conversation. But Romeo is currently located in Yangon, in Myanmar or Burma, and she's been there for this. She's from there, but been there for a little more than 2 years now. After some traveling, and right now as we're recording this, it's late January of 2023, and we're coming up on the 2 year mark since the latest military coup took place on February the 2nd in 2021 during the COVID pandemic when it was coming on really strong. So the purpose of our conversation today is to give a little bit of an overview of the conflict and the conditions that prevail in Myanmar or Burma over the past couple years from a firsthand view from someone who's lived through it and has been part of what's going on to resist it. We don't get a lot of news about Burma in the U.S. and the Western world. It's usually not on the radar of our media. So I thought it would be a good idea to shine a light on what the conditions are like there and what it's like living under a military dictatorship and the kind of efforts that people make to maintain some of their humanity and maintain, as much of a decent standard of living as they can, even though they're under extremely difficult conditions. So I just, as a way to kind of start off the conversation, I pulled up some numbers from an organization called the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners in Burma. So AAPPB is the acronym, Assistance Association for Political Prisoners Burma, and their website is aappb.org. They have a counter on their website where they've been tracking an estimated number of political prisoners, people that have been arrested and detained and interrogated there since the beginning of the coup about 2 years ago. And according to this organization, they estimate that around 17,500 people in total have been arrested by the military regime. They estimate that around 3,800 people have been released from arrest, but that around 13,700 people approximately are still detained. So almost 14,000 people they estimate still detained, and they estimate that about 2,900 people so far have been killed by the military junta. And so I thought we could kind of take those numbers as a starting point, where almost 3,000 people have been killed, according to this organization that's trying to track these numbers, and nearly 20,000 people arrested over the course of the past 2 years and detained and basically made political prisoners. So and these are most likely conservative estimates for the situation, because I imagine it's very hard to track these numbers. So all right, so with that kind of introduction of what's going on there, I want to turn it over to Romeo to give a bit of a, as much of a biographical sketch of yourself as you can give, without obviously putting yourself in danger. And then, maybe start from those numbers about people being detained, people being interrogated, people being even killed, and kind of talk about what you've seen and give us a kind of picture of what life has been like over the past couple of years.
Yes. So the coup happened quite unexpectedly, like soon after the 2020 election. So we all woke up to the news of the coup on the February 2nd. The coup happened at the night of February 1st, but all of us got to know it on February 2nd. And right from the start, there was some sort of national alert that to like remind all the civilians to keep quiet about for 7 days and not to do any action at all. And
So
also,
do you say,
like,
to clarify, you're saying that there was some kind of announcement,
yeah,
like
yeah, some kind, like all of us,
7 days
like,
before?
yeah, all of us were like, so from friends to friends or from group to group, all of us were like asked to be quiet for like 7 days. and like expecting to have some sort of negotiation happen between the NLD government administration and the military gender.
Okay, so let's some of those terms for people. So, okay, so if I understand correctly, several weeks or a few months before the coup happened, right? So the coup happened February 1st, 2nd in 2021. But weeks before that, there was an election, and the NLD party, the National League for Democracy, which is Aung San Suu Kyi's party, they had won like a pretty sizable victory in the election, correct?
Yeah, you can say they won like landslide victory.
Okay.
Even in like military cities, like known for the military cities such as Meitila. So the military party, USSDP, they expected to win in those kind of townships and divisions, but they lost the election. So they thought that they claimed that NLD made a fraud.
Okay, so NLD won this landslide election, even in places that were largely controlled by the military party. So they claimed fraud because NLD won so much of the election. And so a week or so before the coup, they're sending out this notice like to stay quiet or to like stay at home or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're having some kind of negotiation about the election? But what happened?
No, a week before. We didn't even so the election happened, the NLD won, everybody was happy. Is that for a few people who supported the USSDP? We didn't expect the coup to happen, but there are noises from the US opposition party that NLD, had a fraud during this election. So there were some complaints about that. Also, the military gender make I think like formal claim that they had committed the election fraud.
Right.
But none of those issues were resolved. But we still didn't expect the coup to happen. But on February 2nd, we just woke up to the news of the coup. And from then on, the internet was shut down. So we had no way to check the news or anything like that. So we just called to each other and confirm what happened. And like all of us were like kind of like in a dream. Like we couldn't believe the news. We were just calling each other and calling like the people we know and confirming the news and what is happening around. And then all of us were like friends to friends, group to group. I'm not sure who started this notion that we had to keep quiet for 7 days, not to start protests or anything.
Okay.
But anyway, moving from that, someone from Mandalay started the individual strike on the street.
Okay.
And it actually sparked the protest.
Okay, someone in Mandalay started. So so everyone was really surprised by the coup, and of course, this is early February of 2021. So already the country is in a unique circumstance for months because of the COVID pandemic, right? So what does that look like? Are people already sort of locked down at home because of COVID? How did this thing interact with the existing crisis of COVID being there?
Mostly because of COVID, we were locked down. So we were locked down. So some of the business were not operating. However, when the strike happened, we all went out. Start from small groups, from a few places in downtown, like for example in Sule or in front of the U.S. embassy or Korean embassy, or in central downtown and later kind of landmark area in Yangon.
Right.
From there, right, the protests started to grow, started growing and spreading to hundreds of people, to thousands of people, to hundreds of thousands of people, all over Myanmar. Started from Mandalay and then spread to Yangon and other Babu. It just literally in every division and most of the cities and even villages in throughout Myanmar. So you can
Right.
say like nationwide protests started to happen.
Okay. So then there was a
So
nationwide
a lot
protest.
of like marches.
Okay.
Yeah. So even during the COVID-19 lockdown, like all of us went out. So
Yeah.
so so when we started the like peaceful like non-violent protest, they sort of allowed it, like they sort of let it happen.
Okay.
So like thousands of us gather and marching from Cleveland to downtown area, like all of us are marching, shouting slogans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I personally, like my friends and we were trying to get funding and basically trying to get funding for like posters and pamphlets to to give it to the protesters,
Okay.
things like that. Yeah.
So, and you said that by this
Uh,
time they had shut down the internet. So was the internet
yeah.
completely shut down, or was it like it was just on for certain
It
periods of
was
the day?
no, it was completely shut down. But
Okay.
however, like when the protests like when the protests are getting stronger, they open the internet again.
Okay.
Yeah. So in like internet was like they on and off, right? So they let it they let it open for a few days and then they make it off for a few days, like
Uh-huh.
on and off. They also like they wanted to control the internet in order to manipulate the media and also control the information spreading. One thing here, one distinct feature in Myanmar is that everybody use Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook is a central media that like every news spread. So most of the like you know what do you say, like most of the things like we ask people to like participate and to do and
Right.
to participate in the protest or to participate in some sort of activity. All of those happen on internet.
Right. And you're saying that that
Like
everyone used Facebook, and so Facebook was a way to
yeah,
exchange
yeah,
information
yeah.
and to get together with people for protests and things like that. So that was how you're
Yeah,
communicating.
like all sort of information, like even the local news, like about the revolution, like on Facebook, it spread to everyone everywhere very quickly.
Okay.
So like, so of course there are like false information, misleading informations on Facebook media, and as well as so there are also pros and cons, from
Right.
Facebook.
Right. Of
But
course.
still, it is the main information channel
So yeah,
for
okay. So
everyone.
you can share, the regular citizens can share information by Facebook about what's going on and
Yeah,
organize, but also the
yeah.
government can
So
monitor it and the government can put out
yeah,
false information, right?
yeah. So they have their own like Facebook channel, announcing all the misleading news and information. The same as we are also, doing everything we can against the military junta
Right. Okay.
using Facebook. Um, so they wanted to control Facebook, right? So
Okay.
actually they are now physically controlling.
They control Facebook.
Uh,
Now you
yeah.
don't use Facebook very much, right?
Yes, now I don't use Facebook very much. One for security reason. Um, the second, you can't really use Facebook really now. You have to use VPN to
Okay.
pass to the no. But even then, sometimes VPN doesn't really work well.
Okay.
Um,
They can, in other
because I
words,
live in
they can
Yangon,
they can
close to
track
Yangon.
you. They can track you, or they can identify you, or they can identify like who you're
Yes,
friends
yes,
with in
yes,
real life.
yes, yes.
Okay.
So I mean, for me, I don't normally put a lot of personal information on Facebook, for security issue and all those
Right.
things. But most of the time, it is not the case for people.
Right.
A lot of them use their real name and all their contact information and family information on Facebook. So it is very easy to track, them.
Right.
It is especially true on in like um the remote area. because
Okay.
everybody know everyone and everybody knows, their Facebook account, and so it is very easy to track to them. And also it becomes an evidence that they are against the military. They
Right.
share the news and they share the protest activities on Facebook, and by just sharing those news and protest activities, they become evidence that they are, participants of
Right.
the.
So okay,
So
so let's go back to February 2 years ago, 2021. So you said the coup happens, it takes everyone by surprise. Then people come out and they start protesting, and they can bring the internet back up sometimes. And the junta kind of for a while allowed this to happen, and the protests were peaceful for the most part.
yeah,
So like what happened? Because
yeah,
there was a violent crackdown. So explain like
yeah,
how that came about.
yeah. Like so, if I'm not mistaken, in February 19,
Okay.
like in Naypyidaw, a young woman was shot to death by the um by the uh by the police, leading the cracking down the protesters. It
Uh,
started from there.
so
The violence started from
just one. So a young woman was shot in Naypyidaw when
there.
she
Yeah.
was taking part in
So
a protest.
she wasn't even taking part in the protest. She was just like a bystander, just looking at protest happening. But
Uh,
she was shot to death anyway.
uh,
So she was shot to death, and a lot of people were uh basically very sad and not satisfied with how the military conducted toward the how military acted toward the protester.
uh-huh.
So protests became stronger,
Okay.
and the military kind of like took control, now got into like take control of the protest in Yangon. So a lot of crackdowns happen, so they are starting to arrest the protesters, and also they are using force to they are starting to use forces to crack down, like tear gases, and also the metal ball.
Uh-huh.
It is large. It's quite a right strong and large one. They kind of like shoot it to protester.
Okay.
It gets shot. I'm pretty sure your skull can get cracked.
Okay. So they have like,
So
is it like a shotgun or
yeah,
something like that?
yeah,
Okay.
like handmade shotgun, something like that. But instead of using the mat ball, they use metal ball,
They use a
and
metal.
and all yeah, and also they use the rubber bullets. And
Bullets,
first
yeah.
of all, it started from that, right?
Right.
Tear gases, metal ball, like shotguns, and rubber bullets.
Okay.
So uh, it got worse from that.
Right.
I don't exactly remember what date, but they started using real bullet.
They started using real bullets and actually shooting the
Yeah,
protesters
yeah,
and
yeah. So
arresting.
a lot of protesters died during because of that. So so in response to that, we we had like a lot of like safety gears prepared, like according to the stages, right? Like helmet, um, bulletproof jackets, and
Right.
also what do you call the cover to prevent. So
Like a shield.
yeah, like a shield,
Okay.
like so metal sheets and all sort of metal sheet, like thick or thing. So basically all protesters, like we all came out from our home, so we are all using our own expenses, to participate in the protest.
Right.
So people like me who trying to find funding to support all those groups.
Okay, so the protests start to turn violent. The government starts to crack down and starts to use deadly force against the protesters and stuff, which then I think it just
Yeah,
causes protests to become stronger because of the
yeah,
reaction
yeah.
from the government. And so,
So also the protester side, we are also progressing in response to the government crackdown, right?
uh-huh,
Um, so uh, so there are a lot of like fundraisers like me, appear. So we kind of like trying to fundraise and trying to support the protesters, especially the frontliners who has to, go against the military shooting with real bullets.
Right. Okay.
So
And so
yeah,
there's organizing efforts for fundraising to support the
yeah,
protesters and stuff.
yeah.
So
And
where
also the protester. So even within the protester, they are like different groups, right? The frontliners who are like, and then the second liners, and also just the normal, peaceful, non-violent protesters.
uh-huh.
So in response to their violent crackdown, we are also trying to develop our homemade kind of like weapons, right?
Homemade weapons.
Molotov, yeah,
Because it's not
like
it's
Molotov.
probably it's not common for citizens, for civilians in Burma to own weapons at home or anything like that. It's probably not common,
No,
right?
no, no,
Yeah.
no, not common at all. So we are like trying to like develop smoke bombs,
Okay.
like so that we can just throw it and we can like run away.
Uh-huh.
And Molotov is basically kind of like mixing alcohol and like shooting it and kind of like causing the fire to happen so that
Yeah.
it can cause a deterrent for the some sort of like small deterrents, not really deadly responses.
Right.
Yeah, but still we are also progressing to their responses. So at the same time, when they are like violently cracking down the protest, um they are also arresting a lot of people, a lot of youth.
So talk about what happens. What do you know about what happens when people are arrested? What does that process look like and what do people experience from that?
So basically when you got arrested, some you don't know. So like some people I have supported, they got arrested and we didn't know where they were taken to,
Okay.
first of all. So we had to go to insane prison because it was normally a prison that people were taken to, and then we have to investigate whether they are in the insane prison when they were not, and we have to go to other military prisons where
Okay.
it was known for a harsh interrogation.
So let's just
So
highlight
but
real
then
quick. Let's highlight real quick because insane prison. So for the English speakers, it's the name of the prison. It sounds like the word insane. It's spelled a little bit differently, but that's the name of this prison, insane prison, which is on the outskirts of Yangon, kind of on the north side of Yangon, and it's kind of a famous prison for detaining people, like detaining protesters. And there have been, we're talking about this current military coup that's gone on the past couple of years, but there have been a lot of conflicts between the military government and the citizens in Burma for many, many decades. And this is kind of a famous prison where people have been held, political prisoners have been held and stuff. And so you're saying you've known people that have gotten arrested and you go to insane prison to try to find if they're in there, or you have to go to a different military prison, trying to figure out where people are being held.
yeah,
So as you're trying to
yeah.
find people where they're being held, what are you learning about what's going on within the prisons?
We couldn't learn much. So we get basically for some like helper in the prison, we have to give them triple money, and firstly we have to ask them whether they are in those kind of military prison.
Uh-huh.
Even then, it is a hard process, right?
Right.
So it was also dangerous because you can be tracked down and you can be easily arrested when you are asking those kind of information.
Right.
So we could do that in the earlier time though. So we went to the those kind of military prison and give the another money and ask.
Okay.
But we cannot do any other things. So basically in insane prison, you could send food and clothing and some sort of like basic items to the prisoners.
Uh-huh.
But in military prison, you can't do anything at all.
Okay.
You can't you can't know any information as well.
So you might, so you had to pay a lot of money to the prison, and they might tell you that the person is there or not, but that's all you could necessarily find out. You
Yeah.
couldn't necessarily do anything.
Yes.
And would you know,
Yes.
like, what are they being charged with? Are they just being charged with insurrection or
No,
something? Or
you don't know anything at all.
okay.
You don't know what they are charged with, how long they are sentenced, or all those process of like going into trial and getting sentenced. It happened in insane prison.
Okay.
So during the when they were taken to the military prisons, they were basically basically interrogation centers.
Interrogated. So they took them to those prisons to interrogate them. And interrogation
Yeah.
can often mean not just asking questions, but torture.
So it was torture, yes.
Uh-huh.
So like and so it was torture, yes.
Okay.
Unless you got into the insane prison, only if you got into the insane prison, I mean your interrogation was, finished.
Okay.
If you were sentenced you were sentenced for the crime that they charged, then you are done with the interrogation. Otherwise, you were basically held in the interrogation center. Most of the time, many of the protesters, many people I know die during the interrogation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the kind of crazy thing is that, any outsiders that know a little bit about Burma or Myanmar have maybe heard of insane prison as just like notoriously horrible place and all this kind of thing. But you're basically saying that like once you got to prison, you're in a sense you're kind of lucky because they're sentencing you there, they're holding you there, you're in prison, but at least you're not in an interrogation and torture prison, basically.
Yeah, and also your family will know that you are in insane prison. Because otherwise there was no way to know where you are at and what you are experiencing. So what what help you can what support you need you don't really know anything at all. And also there is no way for you to provide attorney or any lawmakers to stand for your case.
Right. Okay. So
it all happened unless you got into insane prison, which is pretty crazy, right?
Right. No, that's super crazy. Like you basically have no rights. They torture you to confess to something, and then they give you a trial that nobody has any, you can't see into the trial. You can't understand how it's working.
Yeah.
They just give you some sentence or whatever. And so, but then you get to stay in prison and your family at least can learn about you. So basically at what point was it, would it have been from February, from the start of the coup, or not long after that, or maybe a few months after that, where they really started to arrest a lot of people?
It started in March.
In March, okay.
Yeah. So they started arresting the protesters. They also started arresting the NLD leaders.
The NLD leaders as well, right? Okay. Yeah, I've seen that. Like a lot of people that were for the NLD, part of the National Democracy. So the government had won that big election. And then that, there's claims of fraud and all this kind of stuff. So now also a lot of these NLD leaders are being arrested along with the protesters.
So a few of the early NLD leaders arrested were killed during the interrogation as well.
Okay, even killed some of them. There's something else I wanted to ask you about. I was reading an article about how it sounds like there was a protest that was made by a lot of the doctors and nurses who basically on strike and didn't want to work in. So you have talk a little bit about the hospital system and the healthcare system. I know the healthcare system in Burma is considered like one of the worst in the world, but you have hospitals there, and most of them are run by the government. But then there are also some private hospitals and private clinics. And it sounded like from the article that a lot of the doctors and nurses didn't want to work for the regime. So they went on strike and would just operate private clinics. Now, so were they providing healthcare and like if people were wounded in protests and stuff, they were like providing care for the wounded and sick? How is it going with the doctors and nurses?
So during the protest, right, there are a lot of forms of protest, like civilian protests and also the civil servants, the government officers, like nurses, engineers, bank workers, doctors. They were all teachers and students. They were all on strike. We called it as a civil disobedience movement.
Okay, the civil disobedience movement, or the CDM. So that's made up of all these different, basically like professionals, whether they're teachers, or engineers, or doctors, or nurses, or whatever. So the professional class,
all the professions that are in government service.
Okay, and so there was a basically a nationwide strike of all those people.
Yeah, nationwide strike. But what happened is that all those people were also either got got arrested, or they like the government like trying to threaten them to get back into their jobs.
Right. So like if you're a
If they,
doctor, if you're a
yeah,
doctor and you quit your job at the government hospital as a strike and you open up your own private clinic and you're providing healthcare in your own private clinic, then you could be arrested, right?
yes. So it is hard to actually operate outside as well. So basically, if you are a CDM doctors or CDM nurses, you have to provide behind the scene kind of service.
Uh-huh. You have to do it in secret because if you just are
Yeah,
out there
yeah,
operating a
yeah.
clinic, they're going to
So
find you.
yeah, so the government trying to make examples of some, CDMers. I would just say CDMers. They try to arrest them and sentence them into prison. Sometimes they arrested the whole family.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So some of the CDMers so went back to job because of that.
Right. Right.
And some people are still doing CDM. They resign. They kind of like they didn't resign. They were basically fired from their jobs
Right.
if they didn't get back to their position in certain amount of time. Those people also even now they were still being tracked and arrested. You know,
Right.
so some CDMers are trying to get away to the border, Thai Myanmar border area, or
Uh,
to like autonomous area. So in Myanmar we have those like autonomic zones where
Right.
ethnic organization kind of like govern. So they got away into those area, or sometimes they still live in their cities like Yangon, Mandalay. However, they trying to as keep quiet as possible.
Right. Okay, so
Yeah,
that's another question I wanted to ask you. So okay, so Burma or Myanmar is a big country and geographically it's hugely diverse. And there
yeah,
are, and where Yangon is kind of in the central and kind of southern part of the country, and Mandalay is in the central but a little bit north or the middle of the country, and then all around you have these areas that are to a greater or lesser degree, there are zones that are controlled by different ethnicities or different hill tribes, whether they're Shan or Karen, or
yeah,
Karibi and so on. And so, and all of those different groups and different regions, they have sort of their own conflict with the military government that, that maybe that has existed for a long time and was probably made
yeah.
worse. I think when maybe if we have a follow-up conversation with some other friends, we'll talk about some of those outline areas. But I was curious about Yangon specifically. When all this happened, were there a lot of people who were just like, okay, we just have to get out of Yangon? They got the military is in the streets and so on, and we have to get out. And they went to maybe different autonomous zones or border zones, or maybe became refugees in Thailand. What is your sense about? Was there a huge like number of people that just tried to escape and just leave, or is it too difficult to escape? Or if you get out of the city in Yangon,
Um,
are there like kind of safe regions to go to where the military doesn't have much of a presence, or what's it like? Or did pretty much everybody just felt like, no, we're pretty much trapped in Yangon?
okay, initially it wasn't pretty much trapped in Yangon. So initially, so announced the government make charges against people like they know the protester against them, like for example celebrities or the CDMR, some well-known CDMRs, and
Uh-huh.
uh those people were like publicly charged. So
Okay.
they got away to firstly to autonomic zone and then to probably Thai Myanmar border. At
Okay.
the earlier time, like around April or May 2021, it was relatively easier to get to the border area.
Okay.
But later it got harder and harder
Okay. So,
because yes, I think like it's quite a number of people moved to autonomic zone, including a lot of CDMRs.
okay.
Uh, the thing is that what when the military, violent crackdown got stronger, the people also started to organize our armed forces. So we
Right.
call it PDF, like People Defense Forces.
People's Defense
So
Force.
those kind of, yeah, people defense forces. Those are like locally emerged forces,
Uh-huh.
you know, like happen like throughout Myanmar.
Right.
So basically they are like civilian, mostly youth. Like they are basically like 18 to around 30 or within 40 mostly.
Yeah.
So they are just before the coup they were just civilians. So they didn't have any, they were not trained in military. They were
Uh-huh.
not trained in any of the use of weapons or anything at all.
Okay. Right. So you had this sort
So
of organic development of the
yeah,
PDF or the People's Defense Force, which was mainly the young people who didn't have any military training or anything, but they just kind of
yeah.
everywhere, all around the country, these little forces were coming up, and there's probably like no real centralized leadership, right? It's just it all kind of just occurred
Yeah,
as a response, or
yeah, so basically, first of all, it was just like happened like in response to government like violent crackdown.
yeah.
But what happened is that um most of those groups were connected to the EAOs, especially in Karen State and Kachin State.
So
Um,
EA did you say EAO? This is the
yeah, like ethnic armed organizations who have been fighting against the military government, soon after the
right,
independence. We
right,
got independence in 1948.
right, right, right.
Um,
Right.
yeah,
Okay. So that's alluding to the existing forces of the different ethnic groups, like the Kachin Independence Army or some group like that, the ethnic armed organization
yeah,
that has been trying to get autonomy from the military government for a long time.
yeah,
So the People's
yeah.
Defense Force kind of organically came up, but then it became associated with these ethnic armed
uh,
organizations.
Ethnic armed organization.
Okay.
So, and also because of the violent crackdown arrest, like the government, like the military regime arrested a lot of youth. So
Right.
basically, even if you are not, a part of PDF, even if you are just, um, coming to Yangon to work in the industries, or even if like a few youth staying together, it becomes dangerous. They
Right.
are
So
become
if there's a
become the target of, yeah,
they'll think that you're part of the PDF or something, or they can just
yeah, 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 yeah. So it became like increasingly dangerous and risky for a lot of youth. So like in our way, right? Through the official transportation route, or through like different, pathway, they
yeah.
use trying to get to the different brigade of the EAOs.
Okay.
So and then they get the military training.
Okay, okay. So that's okay.
They
So
get
that's kind of what's going on out there in the outer territories that are somewhat controlled by the different ethnic groups.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um let's we should definitely go into that, but I kind of for now I want to stay focused on what has been transpiring in Yangon over this time because there were protests and there were battles in the street. I've seen like footage and photographs and really um, kind of terrifying images, and so how long did that go on? And then basically was this sort of reaction put down by the military government or like what, kind of, are there some highlights over the past couple years of how things have changed? And also please talk a bit about like you've been part of some efforts to provide relief and support to these different groups. So give a little bit of insight on how the support um, channels have developed and where where the aid is coming from and where it's going to and that sort of thing. If you're doing mostly aid around groups around Yangon or if it's going all over, just maybe kind of give some insight to that.
Yeah, so the violent crackdown started happening late February
Uh-huh.
to probably to like July. So
Okay.
July of 2021. So
Uh-huh.
people were still like out there protesting, but the thousands of people reduced to hundreds to a few, like 10, like a couple of
Okay.
protesters.
Okay.
So protests are still happening sparsely, but
Okay.
the violent crackdown is still happening.
Okay.
So basically, But as the violent crackdown increased and arrests increased, like youth are like organized into their own groups, and also they were sent to like I mentioned to EO areas.
Uh-huh.
So uh, so as I mentioned, I started like fundraising for different activities from the beginning of the coup.
Right.
I started from like producing poster and pamphlets to purchasing and supporting the safety equipments, and then to developing some of the like smoke bombs and stuff like that. And
Okay.
then I was like deeply involved with like 2 or 3 groups of PDFs.
Okay.
So like so we try to organize, and then we try to expand our network in Yangon. Like I have group in Danhe, one, and I have one group in Insane, one group in uh Line, which is in like close to Leiden area,
Okay.
or in Nyaugala. So we have different groups of like youth.
Yeah.
So we are trying to like have a network, and then we are trying to like separate information, like what is the military action, what are they doing, like how can we separate the weapons that we develop among them. But like what happened was that as the revolution you know progressed, our groups were also cracked down.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
yeah, so some of our groups were arrested. So some people got away, some people got arrested. So we have, and also the safe houses were very vital for us. So I was responsible for securing safe houses, getting funding for safe houses, reading safe houses, so that whenever some suspicious action happen, we can move around very easily.
Okay, so
But
you're involved in organizing safe houses, and you're talking about, you mentioned that you were doing some fundraising for supplies, safety equipment, the resistance effort, safe
yeah,
house. Where are
yeah.
where are you doing most of the
So
fundraising? Is it mostly internal? Are you have external? So I don't know what all you can talk about, but an idea of like how you're raising funds.
I basically I asked my friends for fan,
Uh-huh.
and 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 I had a group. We call it Support for Federal Democracy. We had a small group like made out of basically our friends. So
Uh-huh.
we have the monthly donation, and then we supported wherever the fund was needed.
Okay.
So my direct involvement with this the Yangon PDF groups, but I sent uh financial support to many different areas.
Okay.
So even for the safety equipment, I sent to Mongyua, Mianmu, Minjian, like in the middle part of Myanmar. So
Uh-huh.
I sent to various areas trying to separate the fan.
Right.
So also from NLD side, right, they also trying to come up with different you know um governance system. They have like CRPH,
What does that mean?
CRPH.
CRPH. What does CRPH stand for?
CRPH is a committee representative for ပြည်ထောင်စုလွှတ်တော်
Okay.
committee representative for ပြည်ထောင်စုလွှတ်တော် representing ပြည်ထောင်စုလွှတ်တော် which is ပြည်ထောင်စုလွှတ်တော် mean basically like Congress, like
Congress.
in the US sense.
Okay.
Yes.
All
So
right.
the the government administration, the government leader, they trying to group together. Afterward, they organize a government called National NUG, National Unity Government,
Uh-huh.
NUG.
The NUG.
So NUG. So
Yeah.
their target is to get the international attention and also international support and legal recognition.
Okay, so the NUG, the National Unity Government, is they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're trying to be like a parallel government, and they're trying to. That was going to be my next question: is has there been a lot of like any coming in support coming in from international groups, from human rights organizations, or from big NGOs, or from other
Yeah.
governments that are supporting the people, or is it mostly that like other governments like China are mostly supporting the military?
It is really tricky. So basically, the military government is backed by China, Russia, North Korea,
Okay.
and recently I saw news even Ukraine, like military wise,
Okay.
right? And also the government. So we trying to restrict, for the military government getting money,
Right.
getting income. So the oil and gas sector, from oil and gas sector, military and a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah, right. So we trying to, organize campaigns to, uh, but it wasn't successful.
Okay.
Yeah, so military stay earning money. And also from our side, we try not to pay tax and we try not to pay electricity bills. But what happened is that they basically shut down or take down your power boxes. So unless you pay, electricity bill. So
Right.
most of the time we couldn't resist that action.
Right.
So the military stay and those are many. Uh, so basically we were not very successful in restricting the military and in money. And I think that they had the military and China has a lot of like contracts to start working on the development projects.
Right. Yeah, for pipelines or for hydroelectric
Yeah,
dams,
so like
mining.
hydroelectric time, like yeah. So during NLD government administration, um, the local community can still make noises and can still voice their opinions and organize campaign so that those kind of development project didn't happen.
Uh-huh.
But under the military region, it just there's no place for people to
Right.
voice their concerns.
Right.
Yeah.
So in a sense, like China has a big interest in supporting the military because they're the ones who are going to push through these big development projects.
Yeah.
The Chinese want
So yeah.
to take resources.
In Asia, yeah, in Asia, like foreign relationship, Japan and Korea supported our, democratic movement. But aside from that, none of the ASEAN countries really stand from our side. Not stand from Myanmar people, but basically on military side, I would say.
So the ASEAN is not even really supporting the people, the ASEAN group.
No, no. They trying to be in the middleman and say like be peaceful,
Right.
not to resort to non-violence and
Right.
all those things. But really, they didn't really do anything for Myanmar people.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, we're coming up in a little bit. We'll be on about an hour. We don't have a hard time to stop, but I wanted to do maybe to start wrapping up with to
Yeah.
a few questions or whatever, and we can come back and dive more into some of these topics. I'm interested if you could comment some on because okay, so February 2021, the coup happens, but also this whole time COVID has been going on, and there have been different waves, different varieties of the COVID virus that have come through the country.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about because you're so in a sense, if you're an ordinary citizen, you're kind of dealing with both of these crises at the same time. Can you talk about how it's been under COVID and how the COVID crisis maybe has interacted with the military coup?
Oh, military could make COVID a lot worse. So
Yeah,
we all know that the Delta virus, the version, the Delta virus was really, probably the hardest one
yeah,
that hit Myanmar.
yeah,
Um, so before the military coup, we have like COVID community centers where people who got COVID can stay there and got like healthcare provision, and also there are like meals and all like all sort of facilities
right,
facilitated by the local communities and sometimes by the NLD.
Okay.
the government and then the government.
Right.
However, those kind of like COVID centers were all destroyed,
Okay.
after the coup. Yeah,
Okay.
so there was no way, there was no system in place to control COVID
Yeah.
during the military junta, and
Right.
they didn't have any like support system as well. So before COVID, in Myanmar, the community resilience is quite strong. So if something happened like flooding or those kind of like COVID-19 or any sort of like issues or
Right.
conflicts happen, the community will help each other,
Uh-huh. Right.
even if the government wasn't able to do it. But what happened is that this like the data virus COVID in 2021, the
Uh-huh.
people couldn't do anything to help each other,
Right.
right? So if like even if they wanted to help, they were worried that they were get arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the crazy thing is that so people are gonna go to the community center, people are gonna go to the hospital because
Right.
there are a lot of people in hospital, so they were rejected and they were sent home. Or if you want to go to the hospital, you have to make an appointment,
Uh-huh.
way ahead to
Okay.
get a spot. So which is not possible. You
Right.
don't know when you are going to get COVID.
Right.
So none of the healthcare supports are there. None of the community centers were there. So people are trying to solve on their own. But the thing is that the oxygen supplies is really, really important
Right.
because like the people got like oxygen level got reduced, so they
Yeah.
need oxygen supply. But the government trying to put on hold for the oxygen plants.
Okay. So you had so what people need is they need to have like a compressed oxygen cylinder where they can breathe supplemental oxygen when
Yeah, yeah,
the government is controlling the supplies of the oxygen
yeah.
cylinders.
The supply of oxygen. Yeah, the supply of oxygen. Uh they kind of like they order to shut down the power plant, like oxygen power plant, and also they restricted they had they restricted the also medical supplies.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So like the COVID, so basically COVID, there are like certain types of medicine you have to take during what if you have COVID. So they kind of like suppress all those like the medicine markets. So
Okay.
the price goes up by
Sure.
a few times, and people couldn't even get um people like people couldn't even get even buy paracetamol easily.
Paracetamol, which is just Tylenol, so it's just pain reliever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, pain reliever easily.
Were there, I mean,
Yeah.
were there, so there probably was not a great availability of COVID treatments. Were there vaccines that were provided for COVID, or it's just otherwise it's just using paracetamol and other treatments?
Oh, the COVID vaccine didn't happen after a while. Only happened like like after 2 months of after 1 or 2 months of outbreak, the
Okay.
serious outbreak.
The
Yeah,
Delta wave.
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people died during the Delta wave.
Yeah.
Mostly because the lack of oxygen supplies,
Okay. So
and
that was
also
critical.
the medical
So,
expense were very high.
so what's the, so, okay. So that was the Delta wave especially was very severe. I remember you had that and you were really, really sick.
Yeah,
For a while, for quite a while. What is
yeah.
it now? So that wave has passed, and now in theory the waves of COVID they're infectious, but they're not as severe. People don't get severely ill. Is it still an acute crisis there with COVID now, or is it kind of subsiding, or what's the current
Uh,
status of COVID?
it's kind of subsiding. So
Okay.
now in Yangon, a lot of people are like going back to their regular life. But the thing is that, you know, so the resistant forces are stay some of the resistant forces are staying in Yangon.
Uh-huh.
After they got the military training, they came back to the cities,
Okay.
to to go against the military government, the
Right.
military regime. Um, at the same time, the government informants is a huge problem. So the government informants and also the military had their own civilian forces called PSOT. So they had their own civilian forces.
Okay, so
that
you have
goes against
there's informants, and then there's like the plainclothes or the civilian military that's affiliated with the junta, not the people. So like it seems like very difficult to know who you can trust if you're talking to somebody and they're talking about being part of the resistance and all this kind of stuff. They might just be a spy.
Yeah, they might just be a spy. It is a huge problem. And also there are some like violent cases, for example, a bomb at the bus stop, or like someone throwing a bomb to government offices, or leaving a bomb in the dustbin or something like that. Those kind of like accidents happen quite frequently, and also quite unexpectedly. So you don't know when it is going to happen. You don't know where it is going to happen.
Okay.
So
it's not super safe to go out and about, or do you feel?
It's not super safe to go out and about, and also the military trying to put blame on the PDF forces. These are the PDF doing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, well, I got a couple maybe more questions, and then we can kind of wrap for now. One thing you touched on when we were talking about the difficulty in accessing medical treatments and things like that, and you mentioned that they're restricting oxygen and other basic medicines, so the cost has gone really high. At the same time that you have a military coup crisis and a COVID crisis, also, just like most of the rest of the world, there's an inflation crisis. So can you talk about the money system? How has inflation impacted things there, and the banks? Are people able to still work through the banks, or is the bank system shut down, or how about the economy and the money system?
The economy and money system right now is getting back on track.
Okay.
But in like at the end of April, starting from around May, or in late April to May, the bank system is shut down. Basically, you can withdraw cash money from the banks.
Okay.
Like unlike in the US or other countries, we here in Myanmar we largely operate on cash money.
Right.
Yeah. So because we cannot withdraw money from the bank, and also we cannot pay with credit card, we had to exchange our money from our bank through outsiders. And for example, if I have, let's say I have $100 in my bank, but I want to take it out, then I have to go to the outside agency, and I have to pay 10% or sometimes 12% to get cash back. So even if I have $100 in my bank, I only get $90 or $88.
Right. So when you say you have to go to an outside agency, are you saying that you'll have to basically hire somebody who can go to the bank to withdraw your money, or you get it from outside the country, or what do you mean by outsiders?
So we cannot withdraw money from the bank, but we can stay transfer money through our banking.
Oh, so okay, so if you couldn't necessarily get the cash, but you could transfer it to someone's account if you were paying for a doctor service or something like that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people I just say agency, but basically stores of many exchange stores, and all or just the shops, or just regular people coming out. So I will exchange cash and this bank transfer at 10% rate, at 12% rate, at 13% rate. And then because you can't do anything at all, you have to exchange it.
Right. Okay. So so they'll do the money exchange for you, but it's going to cost you a lot in the fee, 10%, 13%.
Which is a lot of money, we just lose our money without really doing anything.
Right.
And also the cost of living go up.
You said that maybe as much as 4 times the cost of living?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, some of them 4 times, some of them twice, 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you said the
the
banks.
oil prices go up by 4 times. Because of oil prices going up, all the like local products, also local producers, also the prices also increase.
Okay. When you said the banks were shut down, did the government just shut the banks down, or was it that the bank employees went on strike, or what is it that caused the banks, or they were just basically like, we have to shut down because
Oh,
everyone is going to try to withdraw their money, and if everyone
yeah,
withdraws
yeah,
their money, then the system collapses.
everyone is trying to withdraw the money. The government, the people doesn't trust the bank. The people didn't trust the bank and also the government.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, but it's like right now they are like trying like letting people to withdraw by amount. Like in 2 weeks you can withdraw certain amount, something like that. So not 100% blockade of withdrawal.
Yeah, limited withdrawals. Okay. All right.
Yeah, you
So,
can have like limited withdrawal.
all right. Well, I wanted to, if you can kind of mention whatever you're able to, safely, because it seemed like for several weeks at the end of last year, so like in November, December 2022, you actually had to kind of sign off from all your activities and seek safety for a while. And it wasn't until more recently that we were able to get back in contact. Can you talk a little bit about the circumstances and why, what you had to do? I mean, don't give away too much information, but just kind of give a general idea of why that happened.
Oh, because like the remaining groups, like my contacts, they were all, some of them got arrested, and we got like the crackdown increased.
That's
So
like,
I think like,
when is that? Was
yeah,
that like
like
last summer, last fall, or when?
in November.
In November.
It
Okay.
happened at the beginning of November, and
Okay.
then like the arrest got increased. So I suspect that some information were given out during the interrogation.
Uh-huh. And so just for safety, you were like, I better leave
Yeah,
town.
just for safety, yes. Because like the military regime didn't really have a procedure of how things are going. For
Uh-huh.
example, right? Um, people who are in like supporting role like me,
Yeah.
some of them got arrested and were sentenced to life in prison.
Sentenced to life in prison for just playing a support role.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's plain as support role.
Okay.
So I didn't want to take a risk.
Right. Of course.
So I try to get to like a safe place where I have a family acquaintance and also a remote enough that they couldn't really track me.
Right. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that
Yeah.
when you escaped like that, you had to go, you couldn't take any devices or anything with you like phones or laptops or things like that, because if you get
Yeah.
stopped, they're going to search all your stuff and they'll find your communications or whatever. So you have to pretty much just unplug and just go, right?
Yeah. So I didn't bring my computer at all.
Uh-huh.
So I was able to bring my phone, but I have to, delete all my accounts and everything unless they check me. But the problem is that they kind of like control all the internet.
Uh-huh.
I previously didn't know that how much control they had on our media, not like on internet. But the outside of like major cities, the internet has been pretty much controlled.
Okay.
Not in some area, there we can't even use internet at all.
So
There
it's
was no phone line. There was no internet.
okay. It's actually blocked where you
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. So like I think like the communication, they didn't want to. They would like to control the information spreading, about the revolution and also control the media.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So people.
and and now like they are like um they had like X-ray scanning machine in place in major checkpoints.
Uh-huh.
So even within the country, traveling is quite um what do you say, quite unsafe and not smooth. Like basically, you have to get off on the buses or the vehicles, and then you have to pass through checkpoint one by one, and they will check your IDs. If they suspect you, they will check all your belongings and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, yeah, and all the vehicles and the driver has to pass through the X-ray machine so they can scan everything. So the security has been really like tightened.
Right.
Yeah, they trying to control basically the PDF,
Right.
going in and out of Bija city, and also we had to smuggle the weapons to
Yeah,
uh
weapons have
to
to be small.
Yangon, yeah, to other places. So they also wanted to control that, I think. So it's like increasingly difficult to get all those materials.
Right. Right. So, okay. So some of the support groups that you have been working with started to get cracked down on, and you were afraid that there was like an information leak about people. So you thought, okay, I need to leave town for a while and until it's safe to come back.
Yeah,
So I guess you felt like it was safe enough at some
yeah,
point to come back. So what made you feel like
yeah.
it was okay to come back?
Um, I because like I got news that they are in insane prison.
The contacts you had are now been transferred to insane prison. So, and they're there
Yeah.
being held there. They have a prison sentence, or are you able to? Have you been able to have any communication with them and find out what's going on with them?
Uh, they are in trial period. They haven't been sentenced yet.
Okay, they're just being held until their trial.
Yeah.
Okay, uh, so but okay, but you don't feel like, I mean, obviously it's risky all the time, but you felt like because they're just in the trial period, it's okay
Yeah.
for you to come back to town and
Once I can come back to town, and if something happen, I can leave again.
leave
Just
again.
thought like that. Yeah. Because I have other things to do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, right, right. Well,
I can't really like live without electronics and internet
right, right, because you have other
more than a couple of months. Yeah.
you have other ways of making a little money, supporting yourself and supporting your family and stuff, and so you need to use
Yeah.
the internet for those things.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay,
The
well,
other system in Myanmar has been really um damaged or affected, negatively affected.
right.
Yeah, there is no like law, there is no security. The crime rates are increasing.
Uh,
Like there are a lot of like robberies on public places
wow.
and mugging on the streets. So it wasn't really safe at all. Um, because like the incomes doesn't increase, but the prices of living
Uh-huh.
increase by many folds. So
Right,
people are struggling a lot. And
right.
also they are releasing prisoners, like with horrible crimes.
Oh, so they're releasing some
So
prisoners. They're releasing
yeah,
criminals.
to make problems within society so that they could, people can care less about the revolution and care about more about their, living situation.
Wow.
So some of the things are within their prediction. Most of the people in Yangon, um, you know, uh, becoming less and less involved in the revolution.
Uh-huh. So it's like it's a
Yeah,
strategy for putting down the revolution, basically,
yeah.
because people are
Especially in cities, like the cracking down of the revolutionary forces, resistance forces, and having those like two sorty groups that and informant groups, and also their strategy of arresting the family if you couldn't find
uh-huh.
the if they couldn't find the people that they would like to arrest, then they would just arrest the whole family.
Take your family and to hold your family basically as a hostage
Yeah,
until you come.
yeah, yeah. Um, and also this revolution, many of the active participants are some middle class and the lower class, like lower socioeconomic classes. So the financial help is really lacking, I would say. Now
Right.
it's worse. Like people can hardly take part in, supporting financially. Even our group, our fundings are dwindling down, but we're just we keep on going just so that even some amount they can help to some extent.
Right.
Um,
That's
yeah.
okay. Well, before we get to the last question, I want to ask you about that. There may be some people that are interested to help out after they hear the podcast, if they can help out in some way, if they want to channel some donations for support or something like that. What is your, because I know, I mean, like you're saying, the internet is being controlled, and some services like maybe PayPal don't work in the country anymore, and so on. So if there is way for outsiders, people from other countries, to provide support securely, that doesn't put people in danger, but could potentially get some support to the resistance, or just providing medical care or treatment for injuries for people in the conflicts and stuff. Um, what do you recommend in terms of providing support? Is there
Uh,
a channel that you have for that kind of thing?
oh, I have a a friend in Thailand, so we can use her account. So mostly, like when I was accepting donation, we go to Thailand.
Goes through
So
Thailand.
previously my sister had a paper account in Thailand, but her account had to be closed.
Okay.
So her Thai bank can be used. Yeah. So that can directly send to Thai bank.
So
Yeah.
you can send it to a Thai bank, and then there's a way that you all can get it from the Thai bank.
Yes.
Okay.
There is like exchange agencies in Thai Myanmar border.
Okay. So do you think then, if people that hear this want to provide some donations or support or something, can they contact me, and I'll contact you, and we'll figure out how to make this transfer? Is that the best way to do it?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
That would be
All
great.
right.
Because
Well,
like instead of like coming in um multiple transition, it is better to have one like collective transition.
uh-huh. Collect it
That's
up
what.
and then do it more as like one transfer instead of a bunch of small transfers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so if anybody's listening,
Because like transfer also costs money.
transfer costs money, right? Yeah, they're going to take a fee and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if anybody's listening and wants to provide some support, then there is a way to do that. It's just a little bit complicated, but get in touch with me, which you should be able to find my contact information below the video and stuff like that, a way to get in touch, and we'll start to figure out how to do that. I guess the last question I wanted to end on is, I mean, it's a very, very terrible situation, with the military coup, the violence, the crackdowns, the insecurity, the economic situation being bad, the COVID situation being bad. I'm wondering if is there anything that you can identify as like kind of a source of hope or a source of positivity, or something that says like, I mean, you did mention that the baseline culture among people there is, if there's some problem, like there's a flood or there's some natural disaster, that the local communities will naturally come together and work on solving problems, even if they don't get any outside support or any support from the government. So can you maybe speculate about how positive things that are growing in response to all this? And I don't know if you foresee really an end to the circumstances, or how maybe the circumstances can give way to something better, if the government starts to release power or something. Like, just can you give us anything positive, or what kind of positive things can sustain you to keep doing what you're doing?
Uh, I mm, right now like what's the statement is that as long as we don't give up, we can still see some hope. You know
Okay.
that our country would change. But realistically speaking, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
We trying to keep on going with the hope that there are still people like us who are still resistant, but mm, like from the political point of views, there are like some political parties, politically engaging with the military junta, formally kind of like recognizing their range, the administration, and also, the military regime is trying to set up a new election,
Uh-huh.
and and so and also although the UN didn't really UN and international organization kind of say like they didn't want to acknowledge the military regime, but they just couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
If they want to if they want to provide help or aid, or if they want to operate in Myanmar, they
Uh-huh.
had to sign MOU with the military regime.
Okay, so
Unless they sign
let's-
MOU.
yeah, let's highlight that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
large organizations like the UN or Oxfam or like basically big
Yeah.
government agencies or NGOs or international organizations, if they want to be able to officially operate to provide any kind of aid or relief or anything like that, they have to sign a memorandum of understanding with the military junta,
Yeah.
which basically means
Yeah.
like they're going to be pretty
that
controlled
like
in what they could do.
yeah,
Okay.
recognizing their the government administration. So it is really hard to say from that standpoint.
Uh-huh.
But what I'm hoping for right now is that for EAOs to gain momentum and strong support.
Okay. The ethnic armed organizations. So maybe the outer groups are able to
Yeah. So
push back and
so a lot of a lot of like PDF groups are stay in the ethnic organization and in those autonomous areas.
uh-huh.
So my hope is that the ethnic organization from different ethnicities would be united, and NUG become more of a uh set up a foundation for federal democracy
Okay.
that everyone prefer, and have strong military support to resist against the military gender. I know that a lot of people are saying we cannot fight violence against violence.
Right.
We should go non-violence, but really we can't really do non-violence against the military gendered actions.
Right.
There is no way to resist with non-violence, because they didn't care civil disobedience movement. They didn't care about any peaceful means of protest. They didn't recognize our
Yeah.
grievances.
Well, there's been a history of when there's been previous military coups and crackdowns and things, that there have been big resistance movements led by Buddhist monks, right? Who I assume
In
Buddhist monks
2007
movement are going to be, they're inherently nonviolent. They're not going to take up arms or things like that. And the military government is perfectly willing to just smash monks, just like use violence against monks. And so like what
they're trying to use any means possible so that they could retain their power.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well.
So my hope is that the ethnic armed organizations,
the ethnic armed
unite different, and they will become like stronger and more militarily equipped.
Right. And I think, they have kind of an advantage too. And like a lot of the territories of Myanmar or Burma are like super rugged and they're super remote areas. And so you could imagine that it's easier for the military junta to control the cities, Naypyidaw and Mandalay and Yangon, where they can have sort of constant, it's easy to control those areas. Whereas the really remote mountainous areas are going to be difficult for them to control anyway. So you see potentially some hope in the ethnic armed organizations. Well, maybe if we have a follow-up conversation, we can talk to some folks that have worked with some of those groups in the borderlands and other areas and get maybe some of those perspectives and maybe a follow-up conversation to this.
But to be honest, though, at the same time, I feel really apologetic to people living in those, ethnic area, like many ethnic groups, and also people in Magui and Sagaing division. They suffer the most from this revolution.
They suffer the most.
In
So,
Sagai, yeah, in Sagai, many villages were burned down. A lot of people were killed.
yeah. You said that.
Yeah.
Can you maybe elaborate on that point a little bit? You said you feel really apologetic towards these ethnic groups. Can you elaborate why you feel that way?
Uh, because like I think like our country development, right? Whatever development we have,
Yeah.
we people living in the city benefited the most.
Uh-huh.
The progress, what uh job opportunities, education, healthcare, whatever, right? But people living in Magui, Sagai, and Gaya, Chin,
Right.
Rakhine State, Karen State, they all are behind us in terms of access to all those opportunities.
They don't have a lot of infrastructure in those areas.
No, not enough infrastructures and also not enough opportunities
Not enough.
compared to people living in the cities.
Right on.
You know, as current Kachin, yeah, they have been asking for federal democracy
Uh-huh.
since long time ago. For current since 1949.
Right.
For
Right.
Kachin since 1960. So they have been asking for their right to participate in the government and also their right to govern their region,
Right.
which was promised to them in
Right.
Penlong contract by General San when we are fighting against the you know uh fighting against the colonial nation
Right. Right.
like
After
Japan and
colonialism,
English. Yeah.
after colonialism,
So
then
yeah.
all
So
these groups were promised that
yeah.
they would have like autonomy. They could participate in the government. They would have
Yeah.
autonomy over their region, and they could make
Yeah.
decisions for their region and their
Yeah.
people. But they've
Yeah.
been locked in fighting this whole time with the
Yeah.
central government
Yeah.
because
And
the central government wants
yeah.
to control the resources because they want to make deals for hydroelectric power or pipelines or the products of mining or forestry. The sort of greater economic globalization concerns have taken power and have displaced all these groups from really having autonomy in their regions. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, like if like for those development projects, the local communities didn't really benefit much.
Right,
That the central government and from the people in mainland,
right,
from like yeah. But they got the ban from this revolution as well. For us, we didn't. Of course, we had like violence, but a lot of people die in the cities as well. But we didn't get our house burned down.
right,
Although we have like electricity shortage just happened, we still have some electricity. But in those areas, there's like 24-hour electricity shortage.
right. They don't have electricity.
Like we
Their
just barely have
houses,
electricity.
yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
houses getting
Uh,
burned and people killed and
yeah.
stuff like that.
Their livelihood destroyed, their houses burned down, and all those things happen. But uh, yeah. So basically, the people from this suffer the most.
Okay,
So like increasing number of IDPs daily.
right.
We couldn't really have much,
I want to
you know.
specify for the listeners, IDPs are internally displaced persons. So, like the definition, if you're a refugee, technically you cross a national boundary to another country, you're quote unquote refugee. If you're displaced, but still within your own country, you're considered an IDP or internally displaced person. And so there's a lot of internally displaced persons from these different ethnic groups because their villages were destroyed or there was too dangerous to stay there. And so they had to flee somewhere, try to find someplace safer. And they're just out there living in the mountains, living in the jungle, trying to stay safe.
And it like for the kids to have like access to education, access to healthcare, and access to safe living. All those were threatened.
Right.
For the children, and you know and they also live in danger of getting hit by the military weapons,
Right.
like
Right.
the not just bullets and stuff like that, but like rockets and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, the military
They,
has literal jets. They'll fly over villages
yeah,
and shoot.
yeah. And
Shoot.
sometimes they would use the air forces to bomb the
Right.
autonomic zones, and then the people will suffer because of that too.
Absolutely.
By knowing that and stay putting my hope in their forces.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I definitely
it's
want to.
difficult.
I want to do a follow up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Because I get that you're saying that your hope is in these groups around the country that can provide some resistance, and hopefully they'll be successful with that. I want to. We've been going on pretty long. I want to wrap our conversation for today, but I just want to say that I really appreciate you coming on and telling some stories about what things have been like, mainly over the past couple of years there, and the struggles that people have faced. And like we said, if somebody wants to provide some kind of support or something like that, just get in touch with me, and we have a channel where support can trickle in to grassroots groups, providing some resistance to the military occupation. So anyway, Romeo, thank you very much for your time today, and please, stay safe and keep in touch as well as you can. And we'll do a follow-up conversation and get some more perspectives from different parts of the country too, and try to highlight what's going on in Burma, because like I say, we don't hear a lot about that in the US and in Western Europe, I think. But so anyway, I'll go ahead and end the recording now.
Thank you, George.